Hello, everyone. I am Martina Evans, and I'm going to be telling you about my field experience. I chose to do my field experience at Stevenson Elementary, which is in the Mountain Home School District. The principal is Phil McCluskey, and this school is a little bit unique because it's actually located on the Mountain Home Air Force Base. So its grades are kindergarten through fourth grade, and the student body is approximately 300 students. But the unique thing about this school is because it's on a military base, a lot of the students come and go quite frequently, a lot more than a regular school district, because a lot of their parents are active duty military and receive orders to other places. And so they have to move at odd times of the year. Now, pictured here, the picture on the left, all the way to the left, is Principal Phil McCluskey. I think the caption of this picture was that they were receiving a new flagpole for the school. And then on the right is a picture taken from a fire safety day. And that's actually Mrs. Goodman's second grade class. And I chose to observe her second grade class because I was a family child care provider on the Air Force Base. And one of my students, or one of the children I cared for, was actually a student in Mrs. Goodman's second grade class. And she had nothing but good things to say about her teacher. So this semester I contacted her and asked if I could do my field experience, and she was more than happy to help out. Mrs. Goodman has been a teacher for about 13 years. I think the last 4 or 5 have been in the Mountain Home School District, but they've all of her teaching years have been in Idaho. And this is her first year teaching second grade. All the years before she taught first grade. Now, in her classroom, and I have a picture on another slide, but in her classroom, the students were in desk clusters of about 5. Their work was equally accomplished individually and in small groups. So in the morning, everybody would have their Google Chromebooks and they would be working on assignments individually. But then by the end of the day, she'd give them time to read together, read aloud, do math projects together. Um, so it was really a nice balance of both. I know that some of the other students in our class mentioned about like how they line up and walk through the hallways, and Mrs. Goodman's class is similar to a lot of the others that you observed. Her students lined up alphabetically, and they had a hug and a bubble, and they walked really quietly. And I was really impressed because they were only in second grade, and they did a great job with that. Also in her classroom, she really focused on the rewards and group cooperation. So, for example, instead of being like, don't do that, if a student was doing something that they weren't supposed to, and maybe they did or they didn't know that they weren't supposed to, she would point out the students who were behaving correctly. She'd be like, I really like how Rebecca is sitting quietly and not touching her friends, instead of being like, Christian, stop touching them, like, be quiet. And I really, really like that. Additionally, when they would have group meetings at the meeting center, which was like a little spot in front of the whiteboard that they all would sit down at, and they had certain assigned rows, which I thought was pretty cool. It kept them on task. But when they would sit down, she would turn on music, and by the time the song ended, usually be like a minute or two, by the time the song ended, she expected everyone to be in their seat, sitting quietly and cooperatively, and if everyone was, they would receive a reward, which was like a little puff ball in a jar. And when the jar filled up, they got like a special classroom prize. But if, let's say, there were still 2 students, like just talking at their desks when everyone else was sitting down, then instead of receiving puffs, they would lose 2 puffs, one for each person. So it really kind of made the students stay on task and want to do well so they didn't disappoint their classmates. And because she had such high expectations of all of her students, like they knew that she expected them to be at the meeting center sitting quietly. They knew that they were supposed to be on task. They knew that in the hallway they're supposed to be quiet. They really followed directions for the most part because they knew that she expected them to. Another thing that you noticed that she used was paper clips, and she had all the different students' names on paper clips. And everyone starts off in like kind of like a neutral range. Like everyone comes in that day and they're in a good spot. And if she catches them doing really exceptional, like great things, they move up on the chart. And I think they got prizes, at the end of the day or the end of the week. But if they were caught off task, she'd give them a few warnings, and then eventually she would clip them down, as she called it, and it had different penalties. So like one penalty was, I think it was after you clip down twice, you lose like 5 minutes of your recess time. And I know that some parents disagree with that, but I did notice on the days that the class was really, really rowdy and had high energy, instead of taking away their recess time, she'd let everyone go out to recess so they could kind of burn off that excess energy. I know another penalty was like contact your parents, and then another one was like a teacher's choice. And I never actually got to see anyone clip down that low to see what she would do in that system or in that situation. Her curriculum largely followed the Idaho Common Core standards, of course. I noticed that on Wednesdays when I would go, it was always the day that they focused on math. And she had math modules that were specifically designed from the Boise State, education department, whatever. And she would put the modules up, which I thought would have been just for her, and she'd work through them with the students. They'd have scrap paper on their desk, and she'd write the problems on the front, and it was just really cool to see. Like, I didn't think that they would have been able to follow along and be as interested in it, but she said it was the best way that her and the other second grade teacher had found to teach the math modules. And like I said, she does work on the board. So as you can see in the picture, she has several whiteboards around it. And sometimes she'll write on them with dry erase markers. She had a projector where she could hook it up to her computer. A lot of times students had their own scrap paper, or their own notebooks that they were following around. And then I also really like that she was constantly checking the students' level and growth when it came to math and reading. So she never wanted students to be working on something that was too easy for them, but she didn't want it to be too challenging. There's like a certain window that she liked for them to be at so that they could have room to grow and still be a little bit challenged, but not so that it's so hard that they're just like hitting a brick wall. And I really like that. As you can see in this picture of her class, everyone has their Google Chromebooks on their desk, and each student has their name on it, and they always have that laptop. It stays on their desk all the time. Every morning, the first thing they do when they come in after they say the Pledge of Allegiance and listen to the morning announcements is open up their Google Chromebook, and they start working on, I don't remember the name of the program, but I believe it was a math program. And they would do that for about 30 to 40 minutes. And it was amazing to me how on task all of the students are every morning. Like they never, towards the end of the period, they would start to get a little bit fidgety, but for the most part, they stayed on task and completed all their assignments. And it was just really, really cool to watch. I also noticed in some afternoons she would have them do writing assignments in Google Word. And they had programs where they could just read books and like click through and it would read them aloud and move from word to word. So she really integrated technology a lot in her classroom. As I mentioned earlier, she has a projector that she uses every day. She uses music from the computer to keep them on task and kind of like a timer. Um, and then additionally, they have a computer lab in the school that they go to, I think, probably twice a week, and they get to work on their skills. Now, because this school is on the Mountain Home Air Force Base, a lot of the students and their families are similar socioeconomically because, we have certain pay grades and stuff. But it's really cool to see all the different like cultures and ethnicities that are represented in the school. I'd say it's more so than other districts in Idaho, just because we have people from all over the country who are stationed here and raised a family. I know that we also have Singaporeans paired up with our Air Force. Like the Singaporean Air Force is also on the Mountain Home Air Force Base. So in Mrs. Goodman's class, she had like three students whose families were in the Singaporean Air Force, and I thought that was really, really cool. Um, as far as I observed, all of her students spoke English very well, enough to understand and to be able to get through the work. But it is interesting to see the different levels of education that they came from previous bases or the previous hometowns. Um, the other thing I'd like to mention is that because we're on an Air Force base and the Air Force families are constantly getting moved around and around. The students move around. So when I was there in March, she got a new student that week. Like you can get a student in the school all the way up until like the last week of school. And I know in other districts, I'm not 100% sure, but I do think that they cut off, or it's just not as likely that you're going to get students at the very end of the year. And she did a really good job adapting with that and welcoming students and getting them used to everything that was going on in her classroom. Because she had a lot of like when the kids wanted to get a drink of water or go to the bathroom, they had a specific sign that they did to her. That way, if she was working with a student, like they wouldn't come up and be like, "Hey, can I go to the bathroom?" And she'd answer. They'd just come up and do the silent sign, and then she would either nod yes or no. And to my surprise, a lot of the new students caught on to these quirks really, really easily, and it was awesome. Now, for some of the peer questions I chose, one person asked if my observation experience changed my mind on becoming a teacher, and I would say absolutely not. I've always worked in childcare, and before I started my observation hours, I was pretty sure I wanted to be a teacher, and this just really solidified that this is what I want to do, and it made me really excited. Um, Someone asked what made me want to observe at the school that I chose, and the most simple answer is that it is 2 blocks away from me because I live on the Air Force Base as well, but also because of the student that I had who really liked her teacher. That was the main reason I wanted to go to this school and observe her specific classroom to see why her students liked her so much. My favorite technique that I saw the teacher utilize during class was probably just that she was always focusing on the positive and that all the students seemed to like her and feel comfortable with her. I never saw her yell at a student. Even when I could tell that she was maybe feeling short-tempered or frustrated, I don't think she ever let it on to the student. She was always professional and for the most part calm. And I really, really, really admire that about her. Did my teacher incorporate the use of technology during instruction? Will I incorporate technology in my own classroom? Why or why not? Yes, she definitely incorporated the use of technology all day, every day. And I certainly will do the same as long as my district has the funds to do so because technology is everywhere. Like my students need to leave my classroom knowing how to be able to survive in the world. And eventually the older they get, they're going to have homework that's due on the computer and they're going to need to know how to do that. And I want to be able to help them learn that. And that just reminded me, another one of my favorite techniques I saw my teacher utilize during class was that she had no homework. And I loved that so much. She used all of her time to be extremely like effective and productive. And so the students rarely had homework. And that was my favorite, I'd say. And then the final question, has the school you observe at given you any idea on the type of demographic that you would like to teach and potentially has it pushed you towards a particular group of students? And that's a good question because after observing on an Air Force base and being married to someone who's active duty in the Air Force who is probably going to make a career out of it, I would love to teach on a base in the future on a military base. And I think part of it's just because students are constantly coming and going and their surroundings are changing and they're in an unfamiliar place with unfamiliar faces. And I would just love to be someone who comforts them and helps them enjoy education and really helps them feel at home in their new home. So, yeah, if you guys have any questions, feel free to comment. I look forward to reading your criticism. Thanks.